Hello and welcome to another edition of DIY Indie Musicians Talking Music. I'm with Crushed by Pimps today. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
We actually got hooked up through Mike from Lights and Lines from the record label. So congratulations, was listening to your new single on the label. Great stuff. Reminded me of my youth. So what would you? When we were talking before, I found out that I was going to say a power trio, but I'd say in your case it's more of a noise trio.
Yeah, much better idea.
A lot of old noise. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me the story. You guys have, from what I can understand, have been playing together for a long time, right?
Yes. Yeah. We were in a band called Mr. Susan before this band.
Right.
So I would guess about 10 years, Chris, would you say?
8.
8 years. So quite a long time, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a long time.
That's interesting. And have you had more drummers at this point than Spinal Tap or less?
We've had 4.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Was it 3?
No, it must be 4. It must be.
I'm looking at you and asking you. Is it 4?
I think there were 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
So far. Well, if you count the next gig that we're going to do will be with a standing drummer, because our current drummer is away in France, so that will definitely be 4, if not 5. Yeah.
And if you count the Korg drum machine.
Oh yeah, we have a little spell with a drum machine as well.
Okay. And did they all die? Did they all die under mysterious circumstances, or?
Well, the on-off button fell off the Korg.
Well, there you go.
Spat out at one point, so it was difficult to turn it on and off. So I sold it to some bloke in Germany. He was really happy. Other than that, you don't want to know what's happened to our drummers. It's terrible.
It's often the way with drummers.
One of them became a teacher.
Oh God.
The other one, the current one, is a teacher. So we've had someone who went away to be a teacher and replaced him with someone who is a teacher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least they have hours that they can practice and play in the evenings, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why it works actually for them, to be honest.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know, it's marking stuff.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your musical influences, because it's a lot of the stuff. It reminded me a lot of stuff I was listening to in the early 80s. Were you guys influenced by a lot of the sort of post-punk stuff, or?
What were you listening to in the early 80s?
Everything. Lots of things. And I your most recent single, it made me think almost immediately of that first Pill record.
Okay. Did you listen to
the noise and the vocals? You know. Yeah.
I think our influences are vast, and they're different as well. We don't all lock into the same influences. However, the streams do cross.
Mm-hmm.
So I like a lot of, I guess, early 80s and late 80s post-hardcore.
Okay.
And all that sort of stuff. So No Means No.
Yep.
Mission of Burma. Fugazi. All of that shit.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for me that sort of era would probably be things like Fugazi again, Minutemen. Yeah. But really we've got quite an eclectic sort of thing. I mean, I like a lot of psychedelic and sort of prog stuff and anything unusual that's different. I mean, really.
And I really like Godflesh and industrial stuff like that, and Ministry, Painkiller, Naked City. Just really horrible, generally quite horrible music. But in itself, it's so horrible, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
I think. God, I was going to say, I think that the crossover things are things that we both like. Would probably be things like Zappa and Shellac and Fugazi and things like that. I think they're the crossover sort of things between me and Chris, I would think. What would you say, Chris?
I'd say all the angular stuff with the eyebrows.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I can definitely.
Lots of Miles Davis.
Oh yeah, fusion stuff like Marv Vishnu and all that as well. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Love all that.
Yeah, no, I can definitely hear the Fugazi. And weirdly enough, although you're definitely much more in the sort of punk and beyond sort of to hardcore. I was actually just from the guitar sound and the oral of it. It sounded a lot like early Bauhaus as well. But they were sort of pre-goth because they they created it in a way, right?
Yeah, they did. They had a fretless bass then.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of them, and like people are
they were very good.
No, their first record was great. Bela
really
Lugosi's Dead was really good.
Yeah, but I couldn't
what
genuinely
was the
say
Bowie
that.
song they covered on that too? It was actually pretty good as well.
Yeah, have the Bats left the bell tower yet? I just wondered.
Yeah. But obviously, from singing style, he had more of the sort of operatic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He sang more in the way that I sing, so it was a little bit of a different thing. No, that's great. No, I must say I love Fugazi as well. I mean, they are one of the most underrated bands, I think, of of that whole era.
Yeah, especially the rhythm section, which doesn't really get enough credit, I think.
Yeah. No, just for the whole the power. They were such a powerful, you know what I mean? I don't know what happened. They should have, compared to some of the bands that broke big, why it wasn't them just makes no sense.
I don't think they ever wanted to break big,
no,
did they? I don't think
it's their thing to break big.
Yeah.
And do you know what? They were offered lots of money to sign to a major and didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because I guess it's just it goes against what they stand for as an organisation and a band.
Yeah.
They haven't split up. They're just hibernating.
Mm-hmm.
Still,
well, they're still doing stuff. I mean, there's the Mesthetics that the drum and bass are doing, and then you've got Ian Mckay's got a project as well, hasn't he? Which is I forgot the name of it, but it's pretty decent.
There's been a few. They still get together occasionally and make music, but they've just not decided to go anywhere with it or go on. Or just get the band back together. So they're on an indefinite hiatus, I guess, and that's been since 2004, right? It's a very long hiatus.
Yeah, because they had two drummers, didn't they, for a while? That last couple of tours they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they recorded like more or less all their shows as well, and then released them all on Discord. You can buy them for $5.
Interesting.
Recording. So I bought a recording of one of the ones I was at the Town and Country Club, as it was then. I think was it the Forum then in London. It was very good.
Mm-hmm.
They played 3 nights there, and sold all 3 of them out, and then disappeared.
Yeah, they
in this country.
Yeah, well, they disappeared. They disappeared in North America as well. But they were a weird sort of, like you said, there was a collective, and I think that there was a little bit of that sort of cultiness that you'd find as with someone like Captain Beefheart as well. When you hear the stories of that first, like the trout, what is it, Trout Mask Wrestler? When you hear the stories of that recording,
they're horrendous. If you read
insane stuff.
Have you read John French's book?
No.
Oh, it's a really thick book, but it's like terror. It's like a cult. It's essentially a cult being in that band. Yeah, it's a very interesting read. It would Don't really fall go to sleep. Give you nightmares.
Yeah. No, it was one of those things that was just, you listen to it and it's like, what is going on? And then you hear the music, which is like nothing else in this world. You know, I don't think anyone's achieved anything.
Yeah, it's
like
very
that.
carefully put together as well, wasn't it? Because people listen to it and they think, "Oh, this is chaos," but it wasn't chaos at all. It was very carefully put together. You know.
Yeah.
It was written that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the craziest thing, it was on Frank Zappa's label as well, huh?
Yeah, he produced it, I think.
As at the same time that I think he was also producing that crazy guy. It was like this crazy street person.
Wildman Fisher.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was producing those two records at the same time.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting because it would have been the perfect producer for that, because it had a lot of similarities to Zappa, except for the musicality, you know, I'd say more not musicality, because obviously the band was very good to be able to play, but the what would even be the word to use? Compositional.
Yeah, I think the difference was Zappa was more organised, and he wrote everything. He read and wrote music, whereas Beefheart would terrorise one of his band into writing everything down or recording everything and then playing it exactly as he just made it up off the cuff, which was probably fine for him, but not so much fun for the people in his band.
Yeah, no, it sounds like they had a terrible time.
Yeah.
You know. But different era.
Still genius.
Oh, no, definitely. You know, I mean, it's wonderful to see those things. I can't even imagine. Well, I can imagine it would happen now, but no one would know about it. You know.
Well, yeah.
There's a couple of bands, and there's a couple of British bands that do a Beefheart sort of thing. Obviously, not the cult bit. Well, you'd like to think not the cult bit. There's a band called Squid doing the rounds that are a bit Beefhearty. What's that other lot that did all the backing band for Damo Suzuki at the Windmill? What are they called? Black Midi.
Oh, Black Midi, yeah.
They're very Beefhearty as well. A lot of that going on. So there's a bit of it about over this side of the pond. But they're indie bands. But actually quite big now. They're, you know, playing the second stage at Glastonbury and all that sort of chisel. So there's a bit of a renaissance at the moment in that sort of post-punky, arty stuff. Now, what with Wet Leg taking off and everything. So there's a whole wave of bands at the minute that are doing really, really well. You wouldn't expect to. Which is nice.
No, it's great. You know, I mean that's, for me, I think that's the good side of the whole sort of digital revolution and the home, you know, the ability to record cheaply and you know, and produce stuff yourself and all that. There's a lot of good, but there's also a lot of negatives to it.
I think really there's never been a better time to be a listener. There's never been a better time to, because you just got to know the name of a band or look for something random and fall down a rabbit hole and find 15 other bands. The only thing is everyone griping about not making any money. That's the only downside living in this age that we're living in now, I would think. But then, how many really good bands never got found years ago? There's probably loads.
Yeah. Well, they just never got signed.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. I think the downside, though, is the ability, you know, I think it was the collaborative things that are missing to a sense, you know, in that there were obviously some great producers and some great A&R people, right, who really helped careers along, and did a lot towards, you know, getting the best out of musicians, and I think that a lot of that's gone now. You know what I mean? It's either impresarios who take over, and it's basically, you know, cookie cutter bands, or people sort of stumbling through on their own, or working with other people who are, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the thing that people would get, if you're a musician, I think the thing that you would get tired of now would be, you've also got to be like a multimedia person as well, which a lot of people just aren't cut out for. They just want to make music. So
yeah.
It's just, if you wanted to make a success of it and be, you know, on a, you know, an important label that was selling loads of albums or whatever, depending on whether you're doing it for the music or what. It depends what your goals are, really, I suppose.
I have a theory.
Yeah,
I think there's so much landfill music now that people's ears have turned off, and their willingness to explore or desire to explore, or curiosity about new music has completely disappeared, because so much gets fed to them that they don't bother. So, you know, when you play shows now, you end up bringing your mates a lot of the time, because no one's really looking for new music, or the people that are. It's such a small. There's so many bands doing it, and such a small. What's the word? Such a small pool of people that are actually interested in finding new music, that you're getting fewer and fewer people at shows, unless you are someone that's being raved about, you know, at the moment. And I think it's been the case for a few years now, to be fair.
Yeah, I think all this pandemic thing doesn't help as well, because people aren't leaving the house as much as they used to, and everything's really expensive just to go out, and not so much the shows, because you can go and see a brand new band that's just come out for a couple of quid or for free. But the problem is, just generally speaking, people got so many other things to pay for, and it's like just even getting there by train or something is just going to cost you a fortune. I think it's like years ago it was a lot easier for people. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just yeah.
I think there's evidence of this sort of miasma, musical miasma, is people falling over themselves to get tickets to see Coldplay, which is possibly the most banal middle class wet twee nonsense ever.
Since Phil Collins retired. Yeah, no, I agree.
It does absolutely nothing for me. It's whingy posh people who's basically, it's a load of bands that are just whingy posh people, whingy posh kids, like what's that other band, Bastille, like the you know, and Mumford and Sons, and all these bands that have come from money or come from decent backgrounds, that don't really have any anger about them or any energy about them. They're just completely moribund and just assault my ears. I can't listen to it. It makes me physically ill. Not because it sounds bad, but because just thinking about it, you know, how privileged some of these bands have been, and then you've got loads of bands that are really struggling to do anything, and who are more innovative, put more of their soul into it, spend longer studying it. It's just, like you say, cookie cutter bands, but they're posh cookie cutter bands.
Connected
for whingy posh kids.
So your point is, loads of people are buying tickets to their shows.
Yeah,
yeah,
and not anybody else here.
Yeah, I think. Listen, I think as well, it's the fact that social media has taken over so much. I can't imagine going to a show and everyone's looking at their phones, or they're recording you through their phones, and everything is being intermediated with the devices, right?
Yeah,
and it's that's not the feeling of a live show.
No, not at all. I've been to a couple of shows where people have not been allowed to film, but a few and far between. I went to see with my missus. I went to see Ginger Wildheart do like an acoustic gig in a cinema in Leicester Square. I forgot what it was called. It's not the Odeon. It's the Prince Charles, the one that's got a bar in it. And you couldn't film or anything or take pictures in it. He just wasn't having it. And I think there's a lot of mileage in that, because I mean, it's not like you're taking a picture of it for your own, or it's not like you're recording it for your own memory, because you were there.
Yeah,
so you were immersed in it, so you're hardly going to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, I'm sure Robert Fripp does that as well for the King Crimson concerts. No one's allowed to film.
I'm surprised that you're allowed into the room with Robert Fripp.
Only Toya is allowed.
Well, yeah, but I shouldn't say that. I've seen some of the concert footage of some of those King Crimson bands. It is astounding how good they are. I mean, that one with I think all three drummers.
Yeah.
where I had all the three drummers from the
Braider.
band, Sistry, playing together.
Yeah, no, it is pretty.
They did Starless, and my God, it was unbelievable. Just how good.
Next level musicianship, really.
Yeah. And it's everything. It's the sound. I mean, they just created this whole thing that's, mind blowing.
Yeah, I've seen them once. I mean, many years ago in the 90s, I saw them once, and I wouldn't say it was the best concert I ever saw, but it was definitely in the top one.
Yeah, and which iteration of the band?
It would have been the double trio one when they had Bruford and Mestalotto. They had Trey Gunn, Tony. I've forgotten what's the bass player, the ball bass player. I've forgotten his name. Tony Levin, of course. Yeah, and I did actually. I tell you what was very good as well. Just before that, I saw Fripp play with Sylvian, David Sylvian from Japan.
Wow, yeah, that must have been a good show.
That was incredible. He had half.
I love Japan.
Half of that Crimson lineup playing with David Sylvian, and that was an amazing concert.
You must have been art rocked out of your nut.
Well, I was actually, yes. It was at Royal Albert Hall, and it was right up the front. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have mind seeing Sylvian.
Oh, he was really good.
Japan were excellent.
Yeah.
His solo stuff's really good as well.
Yeah, no, he was one of the surprising artists that just kept getting better and better and better. And less and less successful.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it was just like by the end of it was also like with Japan, by the end of their career, the records were so good and no one was buying them.
Yeah,
and I just felt so sorry. It's like, how can it be? And the production, oh my God. Yeah. What was it? What was that one? The Tin Drum, I think it was called, or something like that.
Very good.
What a great record!
Great album all the way through.
Yeah,
there's some serious wobble bass on that, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, no, the whole thing, just the production, the sound, it was like above anything else in that whole period. Yeah. And it was I don't know who he pissed off, but it must have been someone really important.
Roichi Sakamoto. Sakamoto-san, you don't want to piss him off.
Yeah. So
it's interesting. They're from round here. They were from round here.
Were they really?
Yeah, they're from Beckenham.
Oh, right.
Oh, okay.
They're South London boys. They're from the same neighbourhood as David Bowie. Played in the same pubs, 15, 20 years later.
Interesting. Yeah, no, there was a fascinating band, And it was sort of the opposite trajectory of someone like Duran Duran and them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway.
It just got bigger and bigger.
Yeah, bigger and bigger and worse and worse.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, I like the Power Station stuff.
I actually quite like that. Yeah, it sounds very 80s if you listen to it now. But,
totally. Yeah,
but I mean, the actual, they've got all that horrible sort of 80s recording equipment that no one would ever use in any other decade. But the actual playing and they were actually a really tight band.
Yeah,
they were really good.
If
I
may rewind,
singer was what it was.
Yeah.
If I may rewind,
Palmer was a much better singer than whatever his name is.
For 1 second, I'm going to rewind to Japan for 1 second. The most enduring thing about Japan for me was the fact that the bass player made a noise that went an awful lot. So every so often you got a
yeah. No, and you know what? I love those. It's like I'm mixing a song for my new album and fighting with the bass on it. And there's at one point you can hear the string. And it just like it happens at the right moment, and that's sort of silent, except and you hear that go through, and it's just like that's so perfect. I love those. But I love those things. I love that kind of accent.
Yeah. Have you heard of a band called Stump?
Stump?
Yeah.
I've never heard of them.
This band in the 80s, like early 80s. And their bass player is does that. And he's got this. If you listen to it, it sounds like Les Claypool must have listened to a lot of their albums. The style of bass playing is very similar, I think.
He sort of plays non-bass. He plays a fretless wah with strings on it. It hasn't changed for 30 years now. And he plays he plays the dusty part of the neck.
Okay.
You know what I mean? At the top end of it. And plays the occasional bass line that sounds a bit Mick Carney and a bit Jacko-y, like down the bottom. But then he has these accents up the top. He just goes, really, just mental. And he plays the saw as well. Kevin Hopper. He plays the saw as well. He's a mean saw player.
Saw is a great instrument when you know how to play it.
It's what he's kind of doing more of nowadays. He played in a band called Prescott, didn't he? Recently.
Oh yes.
Which is really out there.
That's a South London label. It's like a small DIY label, Forest Hill, I think they are, and they've got lots of interesting. Definitely worth checking out. I forget what's the name of the label. Is it Flatfoot or something like that? Something Foot. Anyway, I'll look it up later. But it's if you can find whatever label Prescott are on, or that's a really good label. Yeah, they've got a lot of interesting stuff coming out on that.
I think they've only done one album, Prescott.
Yeah,
so it's
well worth.
It's well worth looking it up.
All sort of interconnected. They all play with one another, so there's all sort of, there might be different bands, but they're a lot of the same musicians. So
it's the Prescott album sounds like it'd be right up your street. No,
yeah,
100%. If you like all that and stuff, then you're in business.
Yeah,
it's a very wobbly kind of music.
Oh, I'll definitely check it out in that case.
The best track is Rubber Legs. And it sounds like it sounds.
Extra wobble.
Really good. It's so good. And it's in 7/8 or something. It's just a mad time signature.
Oh my God.
It's all over the show. In fact, I think it's 9/. It's just, I couldn't even figure it out.
No, excellent. So I was perusing your Spotify page, and I saw you guys you're going to be gigging in August. Is that correct? Early August?
Not anymore, we're not.
Is that the one? That's the one that got cancelled.
That was the gig that we were due to be playing with Flipper and Mike Watt. Flipper being the legendary
Flipper
band, and Mike Watt obviously of the Minutemen. So yeah, that unfortunately I think it's Ted Falcone's got a problem with his lungs and just couldn't take the risk on the COVID at the moment. Because the numbers have been going up, and I think he was advised by his doctors not to come. So we may be playing some other gigs in August, but I need to be confirmed.
Yeah. And how's the scene in general now? Are things picking up again in London, or is it?
It's busy, but it's a little bit saturated because there's a lot of bands around now.
Yeah.
And we feel quite old because most of them are a lot younger than us because we've been doing it a while. We've been in millions of bands between us. Mm-hmm. Count them more than one hand, two hands. There's just a lot of bands around. Some of them you see them pop up, they start to do quite well and then disappear.
Yeah.
And then another band pops up, and there's just so many of them, particularly in South London. South London seems to be a hotbed for new bands, a lot of whom sound the same. Very post-punk revivalist, but some of them are actually really, really good. Like Neuroplastic, have you seen them, Ben? You heard them?
Yeah. Well, we played with the band that one of them was in before.
That's right, yeah.
They were from Bromley, weren't they? So yeah, which is just down right. It was where we are. We're in the borough of Bromley, so.
Megalash, they're very good.
Yeah, they were good. Yeah.
Who also we played?
Well,
with,
obviously,
brilliant.
Tom Moody and the Greatest Hits band.
Him as well.
He's really good. We've been playing some gigs over at the Bird's Nest with him. He's got an amazing band. He's got the drummer from Gone, the current version of Gone. Incredible band, really good band.
And of course, don't forget to mention Leeville.
Oh, there's obviously Leeville, yeah, which is
Ben Edwards, Benedict Edwards.
Genre to himself, electronic rap and.
Oh, sounds interesting.
Everything, just every different odd style, and yeah.
And how is it in terms of venues? Did most of them survive things, or are new ones opening up?
I think what's happened is previously, not just because of the pandemic, but because there were a lot of places in central London is where they died. So if you're a tourist and you're thinking, I'm going to go to central London, I'm going to go and watch some bands, that whole area that everyone traditionally thought of as being the live gigging area, or where all the music shops were, in Charing Cross Road, there's a place called Denmark Street.
It's got one place left.
And they've pretty much demolished the whole place, turned it into an H&M and a Starbucks, and they've closed the the big venue, Chris, that they closed, the Astoria.
That was ages ago, though.
The 12 Bar Club, all those places, but I think they really went because of gentrification, just greed and property. A lot of the venues are under attack from property people wanting to take them over and turn them into flats, because that's a more profitable thing to do than have a music venue.
Yeah,
I think
the good thing that's happened is that South London, which before really didn't have as many venues, is now getting new venues pop up where people are not now prepared to travel into central London because it's dead in terms of live music, and it's a pain to get to, and it's expensive, and they're starting to do things more locally, which is a good thing, I think.
some of the places in South London that have opened up are really good, intimate, run by people that actually care about the music, and some of the more established places have gone to the wall a little bit, and because they struggled in the pandemic, and now they're after kind of big wins in terms of getting bums on seats, if you like.
Yeah.
Yes, that whole greed thing of where they invite you to play a show and they go, well, you've got to bring at least 30 people, and we'll give you
we've had a couple of
ticket
them,
for everyone. And you just read the email and you just come out there, actually, these people, and then they put you on a bill with like 6 bands that have got nothing to do with anything that you're doing, that is going to completely confuse you. I mean, sometimes that can be fun, just playing with some, you meet some random style of music that you didn't know, but when there's sort of a couple of noise punk bands, and then there's, I don't know, acoustic singer-songwriters opening up for them, it doesn't really work. And it's all because maybe they had 20 mates that come along, I think there's not really a lot of, in those sort of venues, there's not really a lot of, it's usually when there's a promoter involved. If it's the venue doing it themselves, they're normally a little bit better done most of the time. I mean, unless you're talking about serious sort of like touring level stuff, then obviously you need a promoter, because then they will actually make the effort. But when it's like some guy that's calling himself a promoter that has a Facebook page, that's when it becomes a bit silly. Yeah.
Well, listen, it's always been a cutthroat business.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in a band years ago, and it was hilarious because we're in this venue in Toronto called Lee's Palace, which is a converted theater. And it was one of the bigger sort of 250, size room. So a good size. But what was good with them is that they did those 5-6 bands that were all not really related to one another every night. Yeah. And, we started out as a new band. We're at we're opening the shows, not getting paid anything. And by, I think, the second or the third show, we started moving up the bill. And rather than getting a free beer at the end of the show, they were handing us money, and we're shocked. It's like, wait, we're getting money.
What are you doing?
Wow, this is how this works. So, I feel two ways about that, because that's how you get your first gigs, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can understand if you've been gigging a long time, it's not the same thing. But when you start out, you're going to gig anywhere you can. Yeah. And, anyone who's actually doing, actually going to the effort of promoting, and especially these days.
Yeah, I think that the thing is, at the moment, since we all came back from this COVID situation, if you're playing the gig, you tend to think, well, I'm not going to hassle everyone. This venue's on its knees. If we don't get a lot of money, but at the same time, they can at least give you a drink, or at least it's like when you get certain people, well, you brought 23 people and we were expecting 24, so we're not going to give you a penny or a free drink. That's when it gets. or they promise you, you know, that you will get paid, and then the guy just disappears. Like the minute you finish, you come off stage.
Yeah, we'll never see him again. I think it's in the 90s in London, there was a big thing about what was called pay to play. And the Musicians Union campaigned against it, and it was made illegal. Where basically you would give a deposit to the promoter to play a gig, and you'd only get it back if you brought enough people. So what's going on now, I guess, is if you're some promoters whose job it is to promote the show, not yours. It's their job. They're the promoter. They will set a limit, a minimum expectation, shall we say, of the amount of people they want you to bring. So it's essentially pay to play by proxy. So it isn't really any different. And we try and avoid those gigs, not necessarily because we won't bring people, but because it just feels like we're the onus is on us to bring folk, as opposed to go there and play the gig.
Yeah,
we're the musicians.
Yeah,
they're the promoters, and I don't want to be taking money from people I know just for it to disappear into a promoter's coffers and never see any of it. So it's basically bring your mates so we can have their money, and you're not going to get none, which is outrageous.
Yeah, well, listen, it's up and down the industry. I've heard at this point, record labels, like the bigger ones, don't sign artists anymore. They sign fan bases.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not surprising.
They sign Facebook likes or YouTube hits or YouTube. That's what they sign.
Yeah, it's a pop. I mean,
Spotify streams.
The thing is, though, it's always been this way.
Yeah,
you know, they just changed the terminology and their, you know, the approach to their racket, right?
The currency changed.
Yeah.
It's the downside of all the technology.
Yes.
Bands are ubiquitous now.
Yeah.
Whereas when I think we were all probably, I hazard a guess and say we're all of a similar age. But when we were growing up, we started playing in bands. They weren't that good. And the ones that they weren't all that good.
Yeah.
Some of them were great, but some of them weren't so great. Right? And I've been in bands that weren't so great. But now it's like, because music's so accessible to people, there are more better bands around than there ever have been. Okay, they may all sound the same, but they're still, you know, they can still put on a show and entertain people. And people just want to be entertained, don't they? You know?
Yeah.
Oh, you feeling better?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit on. It's whenever you raise your voice, Chris.
Oh, it must be me.
Calm down, Chris.
Exactly.
It's like when I put
it's always it's always the bassist's fault.
Always,
right?
Always.
No, it actually is always my fault.
Yeah. Yeah,
something
no,
I'm
it's
really
always
proud
been the
of.
way. It's always every band. It's always the bassist.
Yeah, it's always me. It used to be our xylophone player. Vibraphone player. He was great, Ian. When we was in Mr. Susan, this guy we were in a band with called Ian the Braider. He's a classically trained Italian musician, plays vibraphone. He used to bring what's called a mallet cat or what's it? Xylosynth. Which is basically a board of planks that's MIDI compatible. And he used to come in and blow our bloody ears off. Take our ears off with his vibraphone, all of which was really nice. It was just like, Jesus, even louder than me. But the thing is, then everyone turns up. And then it just cuts out this cacophony. You can't deal with it. My ears start bleeding.
The possibilities of that are fantastic.
It was brilliant.
That was the reason.
He is brilliant.
He's a brilliant musician as well. But I mean,
we call him the professor.
Yeah. The thing that really interested me about the whole idea of what he was doing is that you've got this instrument that you just plug a laptop in and you can turn it into any instrument you like. I mean, the fact that he plays vibraphone and keyboard is just by the by, because the stuff that you can just put, you know, and he just had this library of ridiculously interesting sounds that he could make, you know, like vintage synths and, you know, Moogs, Mellotrons, you know, you name it, he could just plug in. You just you just have to think of something, and you can try adding it to the song. I mean, the only thing is you can end up having about 12 layers of all these different instruments, and you can get a little bit out of hand.
17 is the record.
Yeah. No, but still, it's quite fascinating, because as well he's playing with mallets.
Yeah.
So it's a percussive instrument, right?
Two like that.
Yeah, no, I know. It's
superb.
Anyway,
your dog's giving me evils.
Yeah. So tell me, do you guys produce your own stuff?
We produce it with a guy called Alex Franklinos, whose studio we use all the time.
Okay.
Well, whenever we record anything, thus far, we've recorded it without.
Right. And what kind of setup is it in the studio? Is it live, or are you guys all kind of baffling and?
No, it's all live.
It's all live. It's all live. I mean, there's obviously overdubs as well, and vocals afterwards, and all that kind of stuff. But it's a live setup. I mean, every time we've recorded, it's always been a live setup. I mean, the only time is obviously when Ian was doing the vibraphones, the xylosynth thing. And he was in Italy for a while. So when we were doing Mr. Susan, he would send files to the studio, and we'd add those. But other than that, I think since we've been Crushed by Pimps, it's been all live recording, basically.
The last lots of recordings we did, which we recorded 2 EPs and a single, and we tried to do as little, for want of a better phrase, dicking about as possible with it.
Yeah.
We tried to keep it really lean. Nice and dry, and I think it's come out sounding better than the first lot of recordings we did, purely because I think we played it better as well, which helps out to dot the I's and cross the T's. But I think it sounds a lot better than the first album myself.
Yeah, I think if you're in a band with other musicians as opposed to just doing something on your own, then the best thing to do is get really tight, rehearse it to death before you gig the hell out of it before you get in the studio, so that when you get in there, it's almost just like by muscle memory and just about concentration, really. So rather than I've never been in a band where let's just go in the studio and improvise or just make it. I mean, it might be a fun thing to do, but it could turn out to be quite expensive if it doesn't sound right. So I think it's always better to get what you want before, do all the experimenting before you get to the studio. We always do end up doing a few bits and pieces that change it in the studio. Once you get in there, you might get some other ideas, but mainly get it all tight before you go in there, so that you're not wasting the sound engineer's time more than anything, because then you're just going to frazzle him, and then he's not going to give you a good recording.
Yeah.
People's engineers' ears get tired. They spend so long, like a whole day, listening to stuff, and having to really concentrate on it. You can imagine it's quite hard work. We tend to end up doing 3 takes of everything, and just take the best one.
Yeah.
Whichever one that is. And occasionally, Al will lift something from one of the other takes if there's a bit of it, and just overdub it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily go over the whole part, but just drop a bit in.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if I forgot to, I once played a D and not a C sharp at the end of a song on one of the takes, and it was the best take. So Al had to find a C sharp for me and drop it in very succinctly.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, it makes a big deal. The C sharp is a fine note.
Yeah, no, it's always about the feel of it. No, but it from listening to your recordings, I think it was a really good job, because you captured the immediacy of things, and that's the thing about playing live, like you were saying, when it's well rehearsed, the stuff, and you can add the energy, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think Pimps from 3 might have only been a couple, because I think we just smashed it. We were just there, and we're in the moment, and we just smashed it. I think we had to do the least of any editing on that particular tune, which is interesting because it's probably one of the most articulate.
Yeah, I think probably the only one that we had to really redo was the Interpol, wasn't it? Because I don't know, there's something about that we forgot. I don't know. We had, it was a bit dead in when it needed some feedback, and there was like no feedback on the guitar at all. So it's sort of, which is ridiculous because that's probably the first song that we wrote as us three together.
It's an instrumental as well, so there's no place to hide.
It's the easiest one, and it's just like, why did we end up doing that again? It's like it should have been one of the new songs that was more difficult, but you know, that's the way it usually turns out.
Mm-hmm. No, it's great. And you were saying you've got another project coming up. You're going to do another.
Got another EP coming out. So we recorded it all in. When did we record it? June, last June.
Yeah,
a year ago. But we didn't want to bring it all out at once because we did that before. We put all of the stuff out at once. It was only 8 tracks. We wanted to call it an album. It had lots of bits in it, lots of samples and stuff, which we didn't have this time. And I think if we'd have just put 9 tracks together and called it an album, it wouldn't have cut it because it would only come in about 35 minutes.
Yeah.
And we thought better to have subsequent releases just to kind of feed more to people and keep people interested.
Yeah.
But the next thing we do will be an album.
Yeah.
We started writing for that now.
Good. No, it's good luck with that. But it's definitely a balance, I find. You know. Because
there was 3 years between releases. So we released the album in 2018 and then didn't release anything until last year. So that's what we thought, we'll chunk it up this time.
No, great. No, it's good. Excellent. And so tell me, so both of you, what was the first record that you bought? And I think we're all old enough. We'll stick to the vinyl. What was your first purchase?
Right. For me, I think the first album that I bought was Bad Manners, and I think it was just called Bad Manners. I must have been about 6 or something like that. Someone gave me, probably my nan, gave me like a coupon for some records, you know, or W.H. Smith. But the first actual single that I bought was Thomas Dolby, Hyperactive. Had the weird spiky hair in the video. It was like hung upside down. It might have been playing violin or something. I can't remember. It's like a really bizarre 80s video when MTV first came out. Not that we had it here in the UK at that point. It's probably too early, but yeah, it was just quite an unusual single.
The first single I bought was "De Do 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 De Da Da Da" by the Police. The first album I bought was "Liverpool" by Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Interesting.
Which is better than their first one, in my view.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it had loads of fancy pictures taken by Anton Corbijn on the cover.
Ah.
Very aesthetically pleasing cover.
Yes. Well, there were always some of those, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Just ring Anton. Here, mate. It's possible.
But I mean, he was doing it for everyone, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was at the time.
He was like the ultimate in sort of rock photographers. Yeah.
He was the cinematographer recently on one of the Joy Division films. I can't remember which one it was. Control,
yeah. That was actually a good movie.
Really good and really well shot as well.
Yeah. No, he's got a really good eye.
Yeah,
you know, he's a legit photographer or cinematographer in that case.
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen. He did a load of pictures of Captain Beefheart and Frank Zappa in the desert. I think I'm pretty sure that definitely Beefheart anyway.
Yeah.
I remember seeing some unusual pictures that he did.
It's all Beefheart and Zappa with you, isn't it?
It is pretty much, yeah.
Don't you listen to nothing else, mate?
And Cardiacs. Lots of Cardiacs. Have you ever listened to Cardiacs?
And you got no Chaz and Dave?
I'm asking Martin, has he ever listened to Cardiacs?
The Cardiacs?
Cardiacs, yeah. Definitely check that out. So if you like stuff that's post-punk or like 80s, and then you mix it with prog, and shouldn't go together at all, but absolutely does, and it's some of the finest music ever written, I think.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely check it out. I mean, I mean, from that era, I was working in a record store in Montreal where I grew up. And I think it was probably to give you an idea of the sort of stuff I was into, I think I was probably one of 2 people in North America who had a copy of the first Human League album.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a good album.
Reproduction. Well, that's a great album. You know, they were a really good band until they turned all pop.
Yeah.
And
then they weren't too bad, to be fair.
No. They listen. It was. What surprised me is that the least talented of when they broke up in 2, the sort of least musically talented were the most successful. But I think that's everything you need to know about the music industry, doesn't it?
The 717 weren't as successful.
No, although their album was good.
Yeah.
You know, but it wasn't. You know, it wasn't the success of the sort of Phil Oakley. You know what I mean? Human League with the 2 girls.
Do you think that the Heaven 17 made a mistake by essentially releasing their first album as a concept album? Because it essentially was, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a concept album. I think it was a little too sophisticated in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Because they
not sophisticated as in Sade.
Yeah. No. I mean, it was very jazzy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It had that gloss, you know, that sort of, who was it? You know, it reminded me of that Joe Jackson record. It was a great record, like late in his career that got really jazzy. And it was a little bit like that. And what I would have liked with BF is if they'd gone in the other direction and sort of doubled down on the heavy duty electronica.
Yeah. Right? Beeps and boops.
Yeah. You know, and they went the opposite direction. Where interestingly enough, it was, you know, the sort of Phil Oakley that, you know, that part of the band or Martin, it's Martin Oakley, wasn't it?
No, it's Phil Oakley.
Phil Oakley, the singer, right?
Yeah. Phil Oakley.
Oakley, yes.
Yeah.
It was him who sort of doubled down on the electronic stuff. I mean, they simplified it, but it was that big chunky electronic sound, and then it exploded, you know, on that record. I mean, that thing sold. That was a big hit. The one with "Don't You Want Me." That record sold a lot of records. You know.
Then he started working with Marauder, didn't he? Did some stuff with Marauder.
That must have been maybe the second one after it.
Might have been. I don't know. I'm not an aficionado about it.
No, I sort of fell out
around
that time. You know, I was really into the early stuff, but I was into all of that kind of, you know, like I'm probably one of the few people who ever bought like the Suicide record, the first one.
Oh, yeah, they're
quite a great record,
aren't they? Yeah. I did one of them died recently.
I think so. I think the other one's touring. The singer is touring though. I think still. I think he's still playing live.
Yeah.
You know, or the other thing, Throbbing Gristle. I mean, they were. That's an interesting operation.
Yeah.
Yeah, they came out of like the Squats in Hackney, East London.
Yeah.
And they were squatters and just started making their own music with various bits of various equipment.
Yeah. No, they were doing sampling before any of it existed, you know. But I mean, it's like, have you guys heard the Silver Apples?
I haven't. I've heard of them.
You should check it out. That is if you're into like electronica and stuff like that, that's a really interesting band. 2 guys. One is a drummer who wanted to become a drum machine before they existed. Right? So he literally, that sort of Martin Hannett, that drum sound he got for Joy Division.
Yeah.
He stole it from that, although he probably never had heard the album. But it's got that really, you know what I mean?
Really
like
tight, really tight,
like a drum machine. It's
hi-hat thing.
So you have this guy playing drums, like this really crazy drumming. And the other guy had gone out, this is in the mid-60s. He went out and he was going to army surplus stores and he was buying army surplus oscillators from the Second World War, you know, that they were using, I don't know for what. Yeah. And he'd set up a rig with the oscillators. So that was where he was getting most of his sounds from. Listen, it sounds like something that came out a year ago.
Yeah.
From the edgiest, the edgiest of the edge of electronica. And it was before a synthesizer had been built.
Pre-Kraftwerk.
Listen, this is pre anything. It was
it's worth listening to just for the experience. It sounds like you're selling it very well. I think we should.
No, it's a surprisingly charming and good record. And then they came up with 2 albums. The first one, which was not a big success. I don't think they sold very many copies. And then they were on a major label, though. I think they're on Columbia or something like that. And then the second record, it ended up getting squashed by Pan Am Airlines. And the reason why, this crazy story, the front cover was them in the cockpit of like a 747 with all the dials and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it looked very, especially imagine this is like 1968, 1969. So very jet age, space age, right? And the back cover was a plane crash site with all the debris, and the airline saw that, and it was on a major label, right? They saw that, and I think they burned all the copies of the records. So there's only like promo versions.
Nothing about worth a few bob.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was it was probably one of the standard releases. I mean, back then they were they'd sign a band, they'd release a couple of records, it wouldn't sell, the band would disappear, right?
Mm.
It wasn't a major release, but it was enough that there were probably 50,000 copies.
Yeah,
and they all got destroyed. The thing was never like they pulled it from stores. I mean,
did they have it on a reel-to-reel somewhere, or?
Oh no, there are copies.
Yeah,
and it still does exist, but it was never re-released. And this is back in the 60s, right? So you have to, it never made it into used record stores. There were never enough copies of it.
Mm.
But it's all online now. I think they're on Spotify. I think you can find them on Spotify. I think I was listening to it. Totally fascinating stuff, though.
Yeah.
It's amazing some of these bands that come out of nowhere like that. It's like total. I love left field stuff.
Yeah.
Sort of anything that sounds different.
I'm being distracted by Ben's dog, who I've locked in the garden.
Well, we're coming up on time. In any case,
jumping at the window,
guys. So why don't you guess what my first recording was? You're never going to.
What you bought?
Yes. First single.
I don't know. It could be anything.
Yeah, it was a number-1 hit. Husband and wife duo.
Renata.
No. Americans.
No, not Carpenters. They're sister and brother.
They were sister and brother, exactly.
Sonny and Cher.
No, I'm not that old.
But just because the record's old doesn't mean you are.
Yeah, they were a 1-hit. Actually, they were a 2-hit wonder, and then their hits were like 10 years apart.
Oh, bloody hell!
No, it was Captain and Tennille.
Who are they? Who are they?
No, you're gonna have to look it up. The song was called Love Will Keep. I'm sure you probably heard the song. It was a big hit in the 70s. It's called Love Will Keep Us Together. Great.
Was it disco?
No. It was sort of one of those in the middle pop records. You know what I mean? It was poppy. It was probably done by one of the big sort of crews of professional musicians. She had a good voice. He played the keyboards type thing. And they wrote 1 hit. I think they were songwriters, actually. You know what I mean? It was one of those stories. Nothing like the Carpenters were actually great.
They were, yeah.
They were, yeah. I mean, Karen Carpenter, it's such a sad story.
I know. Definitely.
And she was a great drummer, too.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. And the voice on that woman. Wow.
Yeah, very good.
But, sad story because she was anorexic, wasn't she? I think she starved herself to death.
I find that Richard Carpenter comes across as a bit neurotic in interviews.
Yeah. Can you just hold 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Sorry about
Hello?
Oh God.
Hello? I'm on the mobile.
that. No, I had an alarm for some reason. Anyway, so what were you saying?
Richard Carpenter, to me,
Yeah.
comes across as very neurotic in interviews. I don't
I
know
think they
why.
both
He's
were.
got mad eyes.
Yeah, I think they both had problems.
Yeah.
To be quite honest.
He
Which
gets
is,
quite angry and animated about the whole scene when he appears on TV and he's asked about it.
Yeah. Well,
So
I think he was
there was a documentary about it. We have a channel over here called BBC Four.
Mm-hmm.
BBC Four is the artsy fartsy bit of BBC,
Yeah.
and they did a whole documentary, like an hour and a half, about the Carpenters, and he was on that, and he was like pretty bitter about quite a lot of things, and there was plenty of eye-bulging moments when he was talking. Obviously scarred by the whole episode, which is a shame, isn't it? Because they did some good stuff. They didn't write it all. They wrote a lot of it.
Yeah.
They did a lot of Baccarat stuff, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bounce.
They were,
knowledge in this.
But I mean, there's so many
Baccarat. I know what Baccarat is. I really don't know a lot about the Carpenters. I've got to be honest. I missed that.
Baccarat and Hal David, damn it.
Yeah. No, but there were so many stories like that are so sad. I mean, Michael Jackson's another one. You know, when you know, it's like, but it's these child stars and these sort of musical, the families and stuff like that. It always seems that there's the Beach Boys was the same thing. You know, look at Brian Wilson. He was totally screwed up because of his dad. You know what I mean? And it was the same thing with the Jacksons. You know,
I think we had didn't we have a band in this country called Five Star that were all related and micromanaged by their parents. They were like a pound shop Jackson
version of the Jacksons.
Yeah, pound shop in the late 80s. Pound shop Jackson.
Yeah,
but with ladies and men. So brothers and sisters. And they had loads and loads of hits over that time. But it just, again, it was like, it felt like it was a pressure cooker kind of affair, like these family bands are.
Yeah. Well, it's a frustrated parent who was a musician usually.
Yeah.
Who was never successful. And then, you know, slave drove his children until they became good, because it'll happen with, you know, 10,000 hours or whatever it is, you know.
Well, they're probably better business people than they were musicians, and that's kind of it, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you start making a few quid and you get obsessed by it.
Mm-hmm.
Our world is sterilized by greed. You do realize that, don't you? Sterilized by greed. It stifles creativity.
Yeah, it's true. I'm not going to disagree.
Don't get greedy, man.
I'm not going to get greedy. I just want to get greedy enough to have enough money to retire.
Oh God, don't we all? Yeah. Listen to us, man. Listen to us. Anyone think we're old?
Exactly. All that's missing is the rocking chairs.
And look at these white beards going on.
Yeah. Oh, they're sexy though.
Ben hasn't got a white beard.
Not yet.
What's wrong with
that? Must be the young'un.
He's not.
He's not.
Tiff's the young'un. Drummer's the young'un.
That's true. Tiffany is the youngest in the band.
Well, that's good. I mean, the drummer has to do the most work.
Yeah, exactly.
He does, yeah.
You know, unless he's a good drummer. The really good ones, they don't seem to break out a sweat. It's crazy.
Oh, he's a very good drummer. He's not very big. He's a very slight gentleman, but he's very loud and very energetic, which you can't ask for more, really, because I really enjoy being in a band with Tiff, to be fair.
Yeah.
With me frantic, rattly, noisy bass playing.
Yeah.
He doesn't tickle them. He smashes them, which is brilliant. If he wants to, he can.
Yeah.
He's got it in him to be a tickler. Yeah. But no, he defaults to playing really aggressively most of the time.
No, it's good. No, it's so he passes the ADD test.
Yeah. Quite possibly.
And have you noticed that? Every single drummer I've ever played with, they all have ADD. I'm just so shocked that they turned out to be drummers, right?
Yeah. He's one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
Well, they're all generally nice, but they just can't stop moving.
Yeah, he's quite hyper. Bless him. He's not here to defend himself.
No need to defend himself.
He's in France. It's his birthday. He's probably still hanging like a hemorrhoid.
Oh.
Bless him.
Anyway, gents, I'm going to let you get back to your day. It was a pleasure.
All right, likewise.
One last thing. How do you find it working with Mike?
He's really good. He's nice lad.
Yeah.
He's quite supportive, I have to say. He came to see us the other day. I couldn't play because I just had a hip replacement.
Oh.
So I had someone deaf in for me.
Yeah.
And they played a gig out of town, a very rare gig out of town, and Mike come along and brought someone with him. It's really nice. Really nice to see him.
Yeah, I know he's a very nice guy.
Oh,
listen, I think what he's doing with the label is just fantastic.
Yeah, he's expanding it all the time and getting new bands on all the time, and it must take up an awful lot of his life.
Yeah.
And he's got kids and whatnot, so he puts in a fair shift with it, so you can't knock him.
No.
He's clearly driven to make it work.
Yeah. No,
which I think is good for all of the bands involved in it, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole scene.
He wants them all to work.
No, definitely. No, it's wonderful meeting people like that.
Yeah.
They really make a big difference. And especially the ones that are as passionate about promoting music as musicians are about creating it.
Yeah.
He
does create some as well.
No, I know he's been in a lot of bands, but I think he said when I was talking to him, I think he said he really enjoys the promotion more in a sense. Because he said he fell into sales and he found he really loved doing it. And promotion is sales, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, I've been in sales my entire life. And I think, Ben, you've been in sales for a long time.
I've been in the sales. Someone's going to put me in the sales.
You've been to the sales.
You've been to the sales.
Have you set sail?
Not quite.
No, but see, Chris, you should be promoting then. You should be the band's promoter.
Yeah, but I spend all of my life doing it. So the last thing I want to do when I'm not doing it is more of it.
Yeah, that does make sense.
And Ben's the mild-mannered, persuasive janitor of the band. So he's the silver tongue. He's the silver tongue.
Doesn't work.
Well, every band has one of those two. The band leader. The band leader, right?
Ben, are you the band leader?
If I'm a band leader, I get the jobs to do.
No, well, listen. Whoever books the gigs is usually the band leader.
All right, Ben, you can be the band leader.
Yeah.
Well, essentially, I think, to be fair, I think you're the most active in these things. You tend to do that sort of stuff. I try and move the music along a lot more.
Yeah.
Right, and nudge it in particular directions and arrange it and stuff. And Tiff comes and plays drums really well.
Oh, that's good.
And she's really good. Yeah, I think it works, doesn't it, mate? Works out all right.
Yeah.
Seems to go along quite nicely.
Yeah, all the gigs I get go wrong.
Yeah, Chris gets us a gig where we're playing in someone else's hometown and we've got to take all the equipment.
Yeah.
And all the equipment breaks down.
Yeah, and then somebody gets nicked.
Yeah, somebody gets nicked. Yeah. Those are the kind of gigs Chris gets.
God.
That has actually happened in one gig. We played out of town in a town called Southend. It's now a city called Southend on Sea. We provided all the backline because I wanted to use my own bass amp, which then broke. So then there were none. And our keyboard mysteriously disappeared because we think we might have left it outside and someone might have nicked it off the roof of the car.
Lovely.
We never saw it again.
Yeah.
If it was it called microsynth? If anyone's seen a Ford microsynth in the South End area 6 years ago,
yeah. I think you're most likely to run across it on eBay.
Probably doing it's probably about its fifth iteration on eBay by now.
Exactly. So actually, I've got one final question, and then I'm going to let you go because I forgot to mention at the beginning. How did you come up with your name? That's part one of it.
Yeah.
And you've been cancelled because of it. Part two.
No.
I'll tell you what the name. So have you heard of a band called the Pop Group from the 80s?
The which?
A band called the Pop Group.
The Pop Group.
The Pop Group. Yes, I have heard of them.
Okay. So basically, they wrote a song that was called "We Are All Prostitutes," which with the theory that basically everyone has their pride.
Yeah.
Everyone can be sold because this was the height of the 80s grade. So it was response to that. If we are all prostitutes, then perhaps we've all been crushed by pimps. So that was the idea.
Gotcha.
That's one of the stories.
There's another one. There's a parallel.
No,
which you probably won't go into.
Listen, it's always interesting to hear, the origin of band names.
Do you ever get cancelled? Bloody hell.
I don't think we've been cancelled with that name. No, I think there was a band that we used to play with a while ago that was called Secret Black Boyfriend that I think got cancelled a lot for that band name, and they had to actually change their band name, I think. But other than them, I can't think of anyone else that we've played with that's been cancelled by anyone.
Yeah, it was more of a joke than anything, but you never know these days. And Pimps is Pimps sex positive enough?
Yeah.
This
week?
What? I said, is Pimps sex positive enough this week, or is it too?
I hope so.
Well, I think anyone can be a pimp. I think in the interest of equality and diversity, anybody can be a pimp. There are no holds barred. And anyone can also be crushed by one.
True.
I think it covers all bases.
Yeah. Although you might have got more gigs if it was crushed by the patriarchy.
Oh, yeah. But that's a bit obvious. No, that's too obvious. That's too obvious a name.
That would be the worst band name ever.
It'd have to be more cryptic than that, but have the word patriarchy in it.
Yeah.
God.
I don't know.
Well, what's patriarchy in German?
Pardon?
What's patriarchy in German?
Oh, do you know what? I should know because I speak a bit German.
So do I.
Oh, God.
See?
Father something.
Exactly. Vater. Anyway.
Vater thing. Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude. There you go.
Zeitgeist.
Anyway, gents, it was a pleasure. Good luck. Good luck with your next recordings and stuff. Thanks. And we'll talk soon and stay on, and we'll do our goodbyes after I log things out. Anyway, thank you for staying through to the end. Thank you, guys.
I'm gonna let the dog in.
And you can let the dog in. Okay. Talk to you later. Bye. Thank you so much.